Good morning, my name is Hope Kauai. I'd like to share with you some background information on the County of Kauai's proposal to erect a fence here in Lepeuli. The county intends to fence from this parking area, the Larson's Beach Road parking lot, Makai, to where the Conservation District begins. This fence is intended to protect the Waioli Corporation fence that's been vandalized. The Waioli fence has been taken down to let albatross be able to fly out. We're here at the end of Larson's Beach Road. Larson's Beach Road begins at Schoolhouse Road and terminates in this parking lot here. This is the county-owned right-of-way to Lepeuli. We have a 10-foot wide access here, but you can see the access way is not 10 feet wide. I know people who will not fit through this entranceway. It needs to be more family-friendly. You cannot carry a baby on your hip and get maneuvered through this. We're supposed to have a 10-foot entrance. It's restricted here to prohibit access to vehicles and dirt bikes, I guess, but we should be able to figure out a different way to prevent vehicular access to this beach. This right-of-way was acquired in 1979 when Schoolhouse Road was closed off by Waioli Corporation. The access way goes down to a kilo, and from that kilo i'a you can see the whole reef in both directions. The County of Kauai Lepeuli Fence Project is slated to begin at the parking lot. This is a $70,000 fence project that only goes about 200 feet. The length of it will be determined by the location of the Conservation District boundary as determined by the State Land Use Commission. The county is proposing to fence a fence that has been receiving vandalism. The fence at Lepeuli, erected by Waioli Corporation, has been taken down several times in the past few years. On June 3rd, 2014, the mayor and several county administrators came to the monthly meeting of the Kilauea Neighborhood Association with a new proposal for a fence at Lepeuli, also known as Larson's Beach. Then County Attorney Ian Jung outlined the proposed fencing and maintenance plan for the county-owned right-of-way and the newly acquired Waioli Easement at Lepeuli. He described the beach access history in the area and told how the Department of Public Works would be obtaining several permits for the construction of this fence, and he detailed the maintenance plan for the two beach access ways. Mr. Jung presented some aerial photographs that delineated the county right-of-way in red on this slide, and in the middle is the ironwood tree that has become known as the Triple Trail Junction of the right-of-way, the easement, and the Alaloa. The KNA was told that the intent of this new proposed fence line was to provide directional assistance for tourists at the county's public beach accesses. He said that the fence line would begin at the Makai edge of the Larson's Beach parking lot and go Makai to the Conservation District boundary line as determined by the Land Use Commission. There will be directional signage attached to the fence, but he didn't say which direction that people were going to be encouraged to go. And told the Kilauea community in 2014 that there would be maintenance on these beach access ways. A map was presented that detailed the county-owned beach access right-of-way lot 4 and the 2010 Waioli easement. Lot 4, the county-owned right-of-way, is twice as long and half as steep as the 2010 Waioli easement. The Waioli easement is half as long and twice as steep. It's a straight shot down the hill, vertical climb. The Lot 4 county-owned right-of-way, laid out by Ralph Daler and the Boy Scouts, goes down the hill in switchbacks, breaking the elevation climb and actually the water flow, so less erosion is generated on the reef. The lower part of the county right-of-way, Lot 4, follows a rock wall alignment, Makai down towards the shoreline. This map clearly shows Larson's Beach Road coming Makai to the parking area, the county right-of-way with the proposed fence line being delineated by the two black lines, down to the ironwood tree that is the Triple Trail Junction of the Alaloa, the public access easement, and Lot 4, the county-owned right-of-way. On this map, it's called the public access lot. So the Alaloa on this map is trail/road in controversy. And the controversy, it's pretty clearly delineated that it is a trail. The county is aware of the lateral historic trail known as the Alaloa being present in this Ahupua'a, someplace in the Makai portion. The state has failed to survey and locate the precise location of this trail, and the County of Kauai's plans are to fence down to the conservation district whether or not the Alaloa Trail or the historic as in use now trail is fenced off by this. And if and when the state of Hawaii should locate and identify the Alaloa, then the county of Kauai would take down the chain link fence that they have erected blocking the Alaloa. So they're aware that there is a historic trail potentially that will be blocked by their fence line. But they're planning to go ahead with it before the state locates it. The KNA and the Kilauea community were told that the county of Kauai would maintain the vegetation along the county-owned right-of-way and the Waiole easement, consisting of clipping and weed whacking to keep the trails clear. And the county intended to work with the KCCC Department of Public Safety Work Release Program, coordinated by Public Works. But so far, they have failed to maintain the county-owned right-of-way beach access. Mr. Jung detailed how Department of Public Works would be constructing the chain link fence from the parking area Makai to the Conservation District boundary line. The fence would have signage on it indicating the county beach access ways, and the entrance gate would have a cattle kind guard to keep motorized vehicles and dirt bikes out. To do this fence line, first they have to find the conservation district, and the first step of that is shoreline certification that's current. The last one was done in 1979. So after the shoreline is certified, then an SMA permit would be applied for, and the planning director would determine if it would be a major or a minor permit. I don't know why they've decided it would already be a minor. And the third permit that would need to be applied for is a Class 1 zoning permit. Maintaining beach access in this area is critical because from Papa'a Bay to Waiakalua, we only have 4 beach access ways. Waiakalua, Lepeuli, Moloa'a, and Papa'a. We cannot afford to lose any of these beach access ways. Lepeuli is really a tale of trails. And how all this came about was there was a public school in Lepeuli for about 100 years. It started in the 1850s, and it was a ABCFM Calvinist missionary school for the first dozen years or so. Then it became a public school. It was a public school until the closure of the Kilauea sugar plantation in the early 70s. Average enrollment was about 71 kids. It was a 4-room schoolhouse, not a small school. It was and some of the attendance diminished for a while because there was a Japanese school right next door. So some of the kids that were in the public school attended the Japanese school until the war years, and The principal was a Japanese national, and he was locked up in the internment camp, and the school was never reopened after the army left. So in 1978, the school was POW, and Waioli Corporation fenced off Schoolhouse Road, which was the public access to the beach during the past 100 years. So there was also a church right next door to the school, the Ko'olahui'ia Church. The congregation moved the church to Anahola, but the graveyard and the grounds are still held by the Ko'olahui'ia Church. So the church was there for about 100 years too. So the Schoolhouse Road was locked, and the county purchased Larson's Beach Road and the right-of-way to the beach for $6,900. So in 1979, the right-of-way was bought by the county from Larson's Beach parking lot, which they just bought, and there was a trail that was improved from the kilo to the beach, and it was made by the Boy Scouts and the district forester, Ralph Daler. So the county right-of-way has cultural components. There is a kilo ia where you can see the reef in both directions. You can see towards Kilauea, almost to Pila'a, and towards the Moloa'a side, you can see the whole reef and the reef resources. So the trail from the kilo had a name, Keala'aka Iole, which is kind of a play on words. The trail does look like rat's feet, footprints going down the hill, but it's also a great limu reef, and there's Vaivai Iole limu there too. So there's rock walls lining the county right-of-way. So the whole thing is a cultural treasure that should not be allowed to be overgrown into oblivion. The $10 easement that was offered by Waioli Corporation in 2010 is very steep. It was created by cattle, and when the cattle crashed through the fence and came down to the beach, they disinterred the human remains of 3 individuals. So it's a known burial area. Known graves are in this trail location, and it's not culturally appropriate to maintain this trail through this graveyard area. The 3 individuals were reinterred Mauka in the same area that has been slated for pasture land management. So the $10 easement that Waioli offered the county is very steep. It's not safe. It's slippery. There's no way to make it family friendly or ADA accessible, and since this trail has been in use, the reef is getting red dirt. Ka'aka'aniu Reef is unique on Kauai because it stays clean when all the other stream estuary reefs are running red. Ka'aka'aniu remains clean. Now this $10 county easement is making red dirt on the reef, on the limu resources. This trail is not wise, it's not sustainable, and it's not safe. The county right-of-way, however, was made by the forester and the Boy Scouts to be community friendly, to not have large boulders in the middle of the trail. It's rock lined, and there are cultural features of rock walls around the county right-of-way. So the whole fence situation at Lepeuli is critical to public access. The Triple Trail junction where the Alaloa, the right-of-way, and the $10 easement come together is where the scrutiny needs to happen on this county proposed fence line. In 2000, the Na'ala Hele State Trail System said that the Alaloa is an ancient walking trail that traverses the circumference of Kauai, and that fee simple ownership of the Alaloa in the ahupua of Ka'aka'aniu and Lepeuli is still held by the state of Hawaii. So the ownership of the ancient trail is retained by the state. And the Alaloa has had continual use. It is still needing to be opened and accessible on a daily basis. People use it for fishing, for hiking, for connecting to other trail loops, and it should not be closed. In the 1990s, a new fence was constructed blocking the county's right-of-way that they had just purchased. It's not a boundary fence. This fence is not determining the boundary between Lepeuli and Ka'aka'aniu, Waioli, and Handwrite land. This fence is along the county right-of-way until the point that it fenced off the county right-of-way. So a 10-foot section of fence eliminated our access on the county-owned right-of-way. All this came to light as part of scrutiny of a violation that Paradise Ranch had created by clearing the beach at Lepeuli. So the state took a look at what they had done, and permitting ensued that triggered the need for these fence considerations. And the illegal fencing of the county right-of-way became obvious during these violation permitting process. There were comments that were submitted by Brenda Zahn, who was the biologist at Kilauea Point National Wildlife Refuge. She had since moved on with her career to, she transferred, I believe, to Arizona, but she submitted comments because she had counted and monitored the colony of Laysan albatross at Lepeuli for like 10 years or so. And her comment was, this area is difficult, if not impossible, to fence because of all the different issues there. You have historic trails, you have lateral coastal access, you have seabirds, you have people fishing and gathering traditional resources. It's a very complex situation. In 2010, the Open Space Commission did a North Shore field trip, and the right-of-way at Lepeuli had been flagged by the county so we could transverse the length of it. It was flagged but not cleared all the way. It was still a little bit difficult, but you could at least find it. Since that time, it has not received county maintenance, and it's overgrown to the point of obscurity. The kilo is so overgrown, from the kilo I'a, you cannot see the beach. So in 2010, when Waiole presented the $10 easement to the county, community members were concerned and urged the county to reject this proposal to maintain the trail that we already own in the area, not to take a trail that we're going to lease from the property owners when we already own one. And the comments for the easement are about the same considerations as for the fence, that the Ka'aka'aniu reef system that fronts Lepeuli is a significant cultural resource, that community input and cultural input are lacking from this project, that the decision should not be made for this fencing until there has been a public hearing with cultural practitioners, and that the Alaloa needs to be opened. The county could acquire it from the state and manage it as a significant, valuable resource. And there needs to be a maintenance plan for the county right-of-way. So all of the things that pertain to not accepting the easement are still pertinent to the fence consideration. So who would this new fence serve? It would only serve the needs of Waiole Corporation in privatizing the ahupua'a of Lepeuli. And the intention of this fence is to block the Alaloa. The county-owned right-of-way is a cultural treasure. It is a beautiful view plane. From this area, you can see the whole entire Ka'aka'aniu reef system that fronts 3 ahupua'a, and the cultural practitioners need to have this trail maintained open, and the kilo needs to be kept so you can see the beach. The Alaloa was documented in 1833 on a registered map by Ursula Emerson. It was a lateral coastal trail. In 1878, the first government survey located the Alaloa on the coast and the Alanui Aupuni, more Mauka. The Alanui Aupuni was also known as the Kaloa Hanalei Road, later known as the Public Road, the Old Government Road, the Old Highway. Now it's called Ko'olau Road. Access on the Alaloa is guaranteed by the Highways Act of 1892. The Alaloa was on the 1830s map, the 1878 map, and both predating 1892. The Alaloa is an ancient trail, and access on it is guaranteed in perpetuity by the Highways Act. Again, the Alaloa is a coastal trail that circumnavigates the entire island of Kauai. And in the Ko'olau district, it's mostly Makai. In Moloa'a, the Alaloa has been surveyed by the State Historic Preservation Division and given a site number. It's State Historic Site 503004-1034. is the Alaloa Trail, and it would retain the same site number throughout the island, just identified by different ahupua'a. So this is 1034 Moloa'a. The Alaloa and Lepeuli would be 503004, 1034 Lepeuli. During the 2009 violation and subsequent fence proposal, the applicant's attorney, Don Wilson, made a presentation to the Board of Land and Natural Resources at their meeting in Oahu. BLNR member Sam Gahn asked whether it was out of the question to adjust the fence line away from the slope and away from the conservation district. Mr. Wilson replied in the negative, that that was not what was requested and that was not what was approved. There are other issues, but that's their preference, is to keep their pasture as far makai as they can, and it doesn't matter if that's where Shipti reburied 3 individuals. Public access to coastal and inland recreation areas is codified under HRS Chapter 115, subsections 1 through 10. 115-4 is the right of transit along shorelines. The shoreline in Ka'aka'aniu is a boulder hop. It's very steep, and the lateral Alaloa Trail is blocked off by fencing in Ka'aka'aniu. The Alaloa Trail does not end. Albatross are not endangered birds, and trespassers cannot be prosecuted for walking on a state-held ancient trail. The state needs to open this trail, locate it, and make it secure for the public. The state needs to identify the Alaloa because there are absurd allegations by contiguous property owners about where the Alaloa is and isn't. The Alaloa in Moloa'a has been located by the state Na'ala Hele and an easement accepted in perpetuity to an area that is now fenced off. The Alaloa Trail that circumnavigates the entire island is fenced off by rows of barbed wire at Ka'aka'aniu by the Handwrights. They allege that the Alaloa Trail is actually in the boulders in the splash zone of the surf. There is no way to get to the splash zone of the surf safely from the Alaloa Trail location in Moloa'a. So you got a trail up on the bluff, and then you got the next property owner going, no, there's no trail on the bluff. The Hawaiians walked in on the giant boulders in the surf zone. The next property owner alleges that the Alaloa is really 1.5 miles mauka. That to pull limu, you would go 1 mile away from the ocean out of your way to pick limu in the ocean. It makes no sense at all. So the state failing to identify where the Alaloa really is has enabled these allegations to continue. The state needs to locate the Alaloa now. HRS 115-5 defines the transit area and makes exception for areas of precipitous pali, where you cannot walk on the surf zone because there is no safe place, that the trail can be put in a safer zone up on the poly. This statute used to say shall, but in 2013 they changed it to say may. The counties may establish instead of the counties shall establish. HRS 115-9 explains the offense of obstructing access to public property by putting up a gate, a fence, wall, rubbish, barriers, dogs, or security guards, and sets up a fine schedule for these offenses. HRS 115-10 puts forth the duty to maintain these public transit corridors and keeping the corridor passable and free from the landowner's human-induced, enhanced, or unmaintained vegetation that interferes or encroaches the beach transit corridor. The County of Kauai is failing to maintain their beach transit corridor known as the right-of-way at Lepeuli. The County of Kauai owns this beach transit corridor, but yet they are not maintaining it. That is why the county accepted a $10 easement, because they failed to maintain what they own, so they took another one that they rent. The County of Kauai needs to maintain their public right-of-way at Lepeuli now. What is the reason for the County of Kauai failing to maintain the public access on their trail that they own? So they haven't maintained the trail, but now they're going to spend $70,000 to put up a fence to fence a fence. But this $70,000 is developing this trail. Any trail that's developed must consider ADA compliance. That doesn't mean wheelchair access. So if you take a look at the typical 10 beachgoers on Kauai, you've got surfers, you've got a local family, you've got somebody with some ambulatory restrictions, you've got hiking tourists, you've got moms and kids, you've got tutus, you've got a little bit of everybody that goes to the beach. And they aren't all superhuman athletes going to work out. Who can go to Lepeuli? Well, on the Alaloa Trail, 9 out of 10 people can go. A wheelchair cannot. It is not advisable for wheelchair access. So 9 out of 10 people can go to Lepeuli on the Alaloa. On the county right-of-way, if it were properly maintained, probably 7 out of 10 could go on the Alaloa. You couldn't push a baby wagon down there. That wouldn't be a good idea. But on the steep county easement, only 4 out of 10 typical beachgoers can use this easement. This is a taking from the public of beach access by using the $10 easement in preference over the county-owned right-of-way. So the Alaloa is a gentle slope. It's ADA trail. It adheres to ADA trail guidelines. The county right-of-way is only a 1/4 mile long, and it's a moderate trail, but the $10 Waioli easement is half as short and twice as steep as the county right-of-way. They go to the same place. One is twice as steep and half as long and goes straight up and down. And the other one has more gradual switchbacks and is rock-lined. So the amendment to the county charter says that the island's special heritage sites and access opportunities will be for all of the people, not just 4 out of 10. We have to consider the future of beach access for our aging population. Why has the county neglected to maintain the county right-of-way at Lepeuli? We've had the Boy Scout troop that originally made this trail. The Eagle Scouts, the current Eagle Scouts, have offered to maintain it. They came to the mayor's office in uniform and said, let us malama the trail that our troop created. They're still waiting to do that. It's been 6 or 7 years. So why can't this trail be maintained? Why isn't this trail open? Why is the kilo not available? The county has a duty to keep this access open. HRS 115-3.5 specifies how you restrict access once a public access way has been opened up. The county has not done that. It's not in the public interest to close off a family-friendly trail and make you go on a twice as steep, dangerous trail. That is not in the public interest. HRS 115-7 is about county and state co-sponsorship of programs. But the rights, the development and maintenance of public rights of way shall be the responsibility of the county. The county is failing to maintain the right of way at Lepeuli. The Coastal Zone Management Guidelines specify that all agencies must ensure that their rules comply with HRS 205. One of the guidelines is to protect those natural and man-made historic and prehistoric resources in the coastal zone that are significant in Hawaiian history and culture. The Ka'aka'aniu Reef System is a significant traditional cultural resource. There are significant archaeological sites and cultural components to Makai Lepeuli that explain the resource procurement of this area. Section 7 of Article 12 of the Hawaii State Constitution reaffirms the rights of traditional Ahupua'a attendants who are descendants of Native Hawaiians who inhabited these islands prior to 1778. The Open Space Commission was formulated by the County of Kauai to protect beach accesses, beach and mountain access, preservation of historic or culturally significant sites, protection of significant habitats or ecosystems. Ka'aka'aniu Reef System is a culturally significant resource. Access to this area needs to be preserved. It has been a priority for the Open Space Commission since 2006. ADA accessible trails are not wheelchair accessible trails. An ADA trail has guidelines with exceptions, and the guidelines are that the trail should be about 3 feet wide. That's an easy one. And if there's obstacles in the middle of the trail, they shouldn't be higher than 2 or 3 inches. There's a cross slope criteria for incremental slopes, and how steep the trails are. The $10 Waiole easement is really steep. It's very rocky, and there's no way to make it ADA accessible. It should not be used. It should not be maintained. It's through a known grave area. So why are we using this dangerous trail through a culturally significant burial area instead of using the county-owned right-of-way? It makes no sense. The latest allegation by the county of Kauai is that the Alaloa is really on Schoolhouse Road. The state Hele system answered this allegation in 2009 when Waiole attorneys tried to say that the Alaloa was really Schoolhouse Road. Hele wrote back the same day and said, no, the Alaloa is Makai. It's a coastal trail. It is not Schoolhouse Road. During the 2009 violation fence project proposal, there was a consideration to give the Alaloa to the county by Waiole. Now this one makes no sense because the Alaloa is held in fee simple by the state. So, but Don Wilson, the attorney for Waiole Corporation, said that the county has no interest in the lateral trail because of liability. So the county is not interested in a gradual slope lateral trail, and they took a $10 vertical trail that's dangerous, slippery, full of rocks and burials. So which would be the greatest liability, the gradual trail or the steep trail? It makes no sense. So there's need for the gradual Alaloa to remain open on a daily basis. One of the needs is for beach cleanups. And right after the initial fence went up on the Alaloa in 2011, Surfrider had a beach cleanup. All the junk had to be dragged up the $10 easement, and it made it really hard to get the beach net up the hill. But nobody wants the gradual lateral Alaloa because of liability. That makes no sense. So here we have Ian Jung's map, his aerial turned upside down, so you can tell where Larson's Beach Road comes in, the red line, and then the parking lot, the little square thing, and then the county right-of-way is the red trail on the right. The Alaloa is the lateral yellow line, and it was offset a little bit from where the Alaloa is, because you can see the Alaloa trail on this aerial. So the yellow line is the Alaloa. The blue line is the $10 Waiole public access easement that was granted in 2010. So 3 trails come together at the Ironwood Tree. Where we are right now is the shoreline certification. that was talked about in 2014. The county just applied for the certification, and the guys came out from the survey division from Oahu, and the map that was presented by the county surveyor shows that there was about 20 feet of erosion since 1979. So this is what is going to be recertified, the 20 feet of erosional loss. So the guys came out from the survey department, but the county had neglected to clear the trail or flag it. So the survey guys could not even find where the county right-of-way is supposed to be. Our beach access is not findable. The landowner's unmaintained vegetation is even prohibiting the survey division from finding it. So it's pretty bad. They came all the way over from Oahu. We have to pay the bill for them to come back again to certify the shoreline. Once it's cleared, the county has to clear this trail so the survey guys can do their job. They cannot do their job unless the county right-of-way is open. They came all the way over to survey 10 feet, and they couldn't even find that 10 feet. So that's pretty bad. The county's To Fence a Fence project has not followed their own guidelines. They required Paradise Ranch to keep the lateral public access Alaloa trail open, but they're planning on closing it off. They didn't do their kuleana to clear the trail before the survey guys came over, and you can be sure if it was a private property owner and they were paying for the survey guys to come over, that trail would have been cleared and available for them to survey. They couldn't do their job because the county hasn't done their job. There have been no other resource agencies contacted for comment. SHPD has not been contacted for impacts to the state historic site, Alaloa Trail, State Historic Site 5030-04-1034. Fish and Wildlife has not been asked about impacts to protected migratory seabirds. Where the $10 easement drops people on the beach is a very unsafe current. It's not a place to bring beachgoers. There have been no cultural practitioners contacted for comment on this project, and we have not, as a county, talked about this precedent-setting To Fence a Fence project, how somebody puts up a hog wire fence and we have to put up a chain link fence to maintain that hog wire fence from getting vandalized. How often are we going to have to replace this fence? And Brenda John's recommendation was for a predator-proof fence. The only thing that the county fence is going to keep out is people. So we're using a fence for people management in an area that can have a migratory seabird take. It doesn't make any sense what we're doing here. So after the shoreline, after the trail is cleared and after the shoreline certification is performed, the Land Use Commission will determine where the boundary is between the conservation district and the agricultural lands. So it's not just a simple line on a map. There's criteria that determine where the conservation district ends. And if there's a plantation road, a farm road, access way, or public road at the edge of the agricultural use within reasonable proximity to the shoreline, it was used as the boundary between the ag and conservation land. We have an Alaloa right in this area. Where a vegetation line such as a windbreak or row of trees more clearly marks the edge of the agricultural practice, this was used. We got a row of ironwoods, and the ironwoods are on the poly. They are the border of the agricultural land, and they are the nesting area for protected migratory seabirds. We have ground nesting albatross that are not compatible with ground grazing cattle. So that's why the location of the seabird colony in the conservation district is critical. And the last criteria is where no readily identifiable physical boundary, such as any of the above, could be determined, a line of 300 feet inland of the line of wave action. 300 feet mauka of the shoreline is used. So it's not just a simple 300 feet mauka of the shoreline is where the CD ends. It's where the poly is, where the tree line is, and hey, if there's a road or a trail there, they use that. So all these criteria need to be considered, not just pull a tape from a currently certified shoreline. So the Alaloa, at one time, about 50 years ago, was a station wagon road. And families would come down with their kids make beds in the back of the station wagon, put the kids to bed and fish and camp the weekend. So the public pedestrian ancient access way at points in time was also a vehicular road. On the two contiguous properties, Waipake and Ka'aka'aniu, there have been conservation district boundary determinations. So it's not rocket science, it's not lost in space, it's a pretty easy equation to figure out where the conservation district boundary is, but it needs to take in consideration extant resources. The county's proposal is to fence from the parking lot to the conservation district boundary. Their intention is to fence off the Alaloa until a point in time that the state comes back and locates the Alaloa. That is, I don't believe that is a legal way to approach an ancient trail that is supposed to be preserved in perpetuity. The failure to maintain access on the county-owned right-of-way is a taking. The county intending to fence off the Alaloa is a taking. So these two takings are forcing people to go down an unsafe trail through disinterments, through a place that cattle have kicked human remains out of the trail. It's culturally unconscionable to choose this way instead of the county-owned right-of-way built by the Eagle Scouts. Ka'aka'aniu should be accessible to everybody, not just superheroes. There's been 40 years of access restriction by fencing in this area already. First, Schoolhouse Road in the 70s and 80s. In the 90s, the county-owned right-of-way was fenced off. Now, the county is proposing to fence off the Alaloa. This is not the way to consider public access. What is the future of public access at Lepeuli? We lost Schoolhouse Road. The county right-of-way was fenced off and nobody did anything about it for over a decade. And now the county is intending to fence off the Alaloa. There's been no involvement from Fish and Wildlife or the State Historic Preservation Division. There's been no comments from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs on this project, even though there's been many pages of comments about the Alaloa restriction at Moloa'a Bay Ranch, at Waipake, and the previous fence proposal at Lepeuli. They were told to check with the Historic Preservation Office and that they believe that the fencing would be restricting public access on the trail. Then Planning Director Ian Costa told Paradise Ranch that the location of the fence is subject to approval by DLNR and Na'ala Hele to assure that public access to and along the lateral coastal trail is approved. The county of Kauai was concerned that Paradise Ranch might restrict public access on the very same lateral coastal trail that they are proposing to fence off. In 2008, Moloa'a Bay Ranch proposed to relocate a segment of the Alaloa Trail. This generated environmental assessment, which included an archaeological inventory and a cultural impact assessment. The cultural impact assessment interviewed 4 pages of cultural commenters, and there were 5 people interviewed in depth about the impacts of relocating the Alaloa Trail. Mark Boiser indicated a lot of concern about public access. He spoke on the recent restrictions of public access by private landowners, as well as the lack of parking and overall negative ambiance of Moloa'a in the recent years. Many family traditions are lost by the restriction of public access, and Isabella Aida was interviewed, as were Val and Elizabeth Ako. Most concern was about public access to the area being restricted by private landowners. All the concerns in the Moloa'a Bay Ranch environmental assessment were about relocating the trail just a couple hundred yards, not closing down the trail like the county of Kauai is proposing to do. There has been no submission to OHA for comment about the county of Kauai's intention to close off the lateral coastal trail known as the Alaloa. No comment from OHA, Fish and Wildlife, or SHPD. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs has not been consulted about the impact of fencing off the Alaloa in Lepeuli by the county of Kauai. Even though they were very concerned about the relocation of the Alaloa at Moloa'a Bay Ranch, and they were concerned about the previous fence proposal by Paradise Ranch, LLC, at Lepeuli, and they were also have written to the BLNR about ownership of the Alaloa in Lepeuli, which has been proven to be still held by the state. So even though they have been very concerned about impacts to the Alaloa in the area, they have not been asked for comment on the closure of this fence. By this fence, in 2008, when considering relocating the Alaloa, OHA responded that it is the right of our Hawaiian beneficiaries to access and traverse the ala of their kupuna and to reconnect with their ancestors and Aumakua for guidance is a spiritual and customary practice protected by the Constitution of the State of Hawaii. They furthered that the Kauai County Planning Commission, considering this Alaloa relocation, as a subagency of the state of Hawaii, and prior to issuing substantive decisions impacting our Hawaiian beneficiaries, must closely assess the impacts of these decisions on the constitutionally protected rights of Native Hawaiians to exercise their traditional and customary Native Hawaiian practices, such as gathering limu kohu in the place and manner of their kapuna kahiko. We look forward to your intervention by your department in conjunction with our office to uphold the public trust responsibilities to protect the historical legacy of Hawaii and prevent irreparable loss, as may be the case with the Moloa'a Trail and the Ala al na Kupuna Kahiko. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs has not been asked about the potential closure of access on the ancient trail known as the Alaloa by this proposed fence line by the county of Kauai. In 2011, OHA was notified that the Alaloa was blocked by a fence. They responded, a review of DLNR's position of ownership and public access rights in the Alaloa through Lepeuli would provide necessary clarification for the Kauai community to move towards resolution of this issue. OHA was notified that the fence was completed during the May 21st, 22nd, 2011 weekend. Although the fence was moved Mauka and allegedly out of the conservation district, OHA's beneficiaries have advised that the fence is blocking access to the Alaloa, a trail they have used to exercise their traditional and customary Native Hawaiian practices for generations. OHA welcomes the DLNR's review into the issue and hopes it will provide clarity on its position as it relates to the ownership of and public access rights through the Alaloa in Lepeuli. The CDUA application by Paradise Ranch in 2010 states on page 6 that there is no record of Native Hawaiian usage on the property, which is a whole ahupua'a, since the 1850s. OHA asked to review the records that the applicant, Paradise Ranch, used to arrive at this conclusion. Further, OHA is troubled by the applicant's suggestion on page 6 that the state, quote, should not take any action to establish any protection, end quote, of traditional and customary Native Hawaiian rights. The Constitution specifically asserts that the state must protect Native Hawaiian rights. In addition, the Hawaii Supreme Court ruled that the state must assess the impacts its actions will have on Native Hawaiian resources and rights. See the three-part test the court established in the Pa'akaio Ka'aina versus Land Use Commission 1994, Hawaii 3147, 2000. This property that Paradise Ranch alleges there is no record of Native Hawaiian usage had a church and a school excluded from the Ahupua'a grant in 1851. The school was in use until 1970 something, 1978 I believe, And until the import of the Japanese laborers for Kilauea sugar plantation, it was primarily Hawaiian only school. So OHA asking to review the records, I don't think they were ever provided the records that the applicant used to make this absurd allegation. In 2010, OHA responded to a previous fence line proposal by Paradise Ranch with concerns that the project will impact constitutionally protected traditional and customary Native Hawaiian rights. We note that the project site is located near the shoreline, where Native Hawaiians engage in a number of traditional and customary practices such as fishing and gathering. Transversing the Alaloa for fishing and gathering in this ahupua'a is a traditional and customary practice. OHA furthered with specific concerns about Paradise Ranch's proposed fence line project's impact on area trails, particularly the Alaloa, designated as State of Hawaii Historic Site 503004. It should be 1034. It is our understanding that the traditional use of this trail has never ceased. We fear that the proposed fence will disrupt our beneficiaries' use of the trail and impact the trail itself. Moreover, there seems to be a disagreement between the applicant and the community regarding the exact location of the Alaloa and Schoolhouse Road. We request that the state officials and the applicant, Paradise Ranch, consult with the community and OHA to discuss appropriate measures to mitigate the impacts this project will have on cultural sites and traditional and customary Native Hawaiian practices. OHA furthered, in addition, the Historic, Archaeological, and Cultural Sites section of this CDUA is incomplete, as no sites are listed, not even the Alaloa, which, as mentioned earlier, is a state historic site. Please note that the applicant must identify and submit management plans for historic, archaeological, and cultural sites located not only within the subject parcel, but also near it. This property is owned by Waioli Corporation, which is a historic preservation 501c3. They have not inventoried any of the historic, archaeological, or cultural sites on this entire ahupua'a. The State Ahamoku Council has not been consulted for comments on the potential to close off all access on the lateral coastal trail. So there are triggers that make an EIS required on a project. One is the use of county, state, or federal funds. This one's got county funds all over it. Proximity to the conservation district. We don't even know where the conservation district ends in this area. Construction within the SMA. The whole fence is supposed to be within the SMA. And impact to historic sites. So we have pre-contact ancient Hawaiian sites here. We have proto-contact Hawaiian sites here. We have plantation sites here. And we also have World War II bunkers. So none of the history has been considered in this area. Lepeuli has never had an archaeological survey. So how could the state even consider what resources are going to be impacted if it's never been surveyed? Lepeuli is held by Waioli Corporation, which is a historic preservation 501c3, but they have never had a historic inventory or an archaeological inventory of their property. There's been no long-term, secondary, or cumulative impacts to this fence considered. Nobody's talked about how long this fence is going to last and who has to replace it. So once a project is considered that it will have impact, the significance of the impact is determined. And the significance criteria include whether there's an irrevocable commitment or loss of any natural or cultural resource. This totally involves the loss of the Alaloa. Curtails the range of beneficial uses of the environment. It eliminates lateral coastal transit on the Alaloa, which enables cultural resource procurement. So that is a definite curtail of beneficial uses. Conflicts with the state's long-term environmental policies or goals or guidelines. We are using an erosion-causing trail instead of sustainable trails created by a forester. That makes no sense. It substantially affects economic or social welfare of the community or state. It definitely affects the social welfare of Native Hawaiian cultural practitioners and their public health, Part E. It involves substantial secondary impacts, such as population changes or effects on public facilities. It definitely impacts the population dynamics of beachgoers. To the superheroes, if you eliminate the county right-of-way, which is a gentle trail, and the lateral coastal Alaloa, which is a very gradual trail, and make people go down the steep trail only, you have eliminated quite a significant component of our population. Substantially affects a rare, threatened, or endangered species or its habitat. Ka'aka'aniu Reef is nursery habitat to Hawaiian monk seals. It's a pupping and rearing habitat of great importance. Seals come from far distances to have their babies and rear them for the first couple months at Lepeuli Ka'aka'aniu Reef. Detrimentally affects water quality. The use of the $10 Waioli Trail has made red runoff on Ka'aka'aniu Reef. It's usually a clean reef. Now it is running muddy. This trail cannot go on eroding onto the reef like it is. Effects are as likely to suffer damage by being located in an environmentally sensitive area, such as a floodplain, a tsunami zone, beach, erosion-prone area, geologically hazardous land, estuary, freshwater, or coastal waters. Well, let's see. It's a tsunami zone, beach, erosion-prone area. I don't know about geologically hazardous, but it is an estuary and it is Class A coastal waters. Substantially affects scenic vistas and view planes. This is an unobstructed view of an unaltered beach. It's unequaled. And this fence is obtrusive and should not be in this area at all. So out of the 13 criteria for significance, the County of Kauai to Fence a Fence project meets 12 of the 13 significance criteria. The only one it doesn't is that it requires substantial energy consumption. Doesn't. So 12 out of the 13 significant criteria are met. Laysan albatross are migratory birds protected under the 1918 Migratory Bird Treaty Act, which states it's unlawful to pursue, hunt, capture, kill, take, kill, possess, or offer for sale any migratory birds. So the putting up of a fence in their major flyway and runway is a take.
Come on, come on. Oh, good work.
The county of Kauai needs to consider this fence action as a take, and it needs to be designed by wildlife biologists, not by attorneys. The fines for an intentional take of an albatross can be up to $10,000 per bird. And again, nesting, rearing, and runway habitats are most critical for albatross. They're very heavy birds. They need about an 11-knot wind to take off, and the direction of the wind determines the direction of their takeoff pattern. So this bird, the winds were coming directly onshore, and he was able to fly right along the fence line. If it was coming from an angle, he would be taking off over this wire. So the top wire on this fence was barbed wire. I believe Fish and Wildlife had it removed before it killed albatross, but the hog wire remained. And the county's intention is to replace the 4-foot fence with a 6-foot fence, but they're going to paint it green. So as Council Chairperson Raposo said, so they're going to paint it green so the birds don't see the fence before they get killed. The Alaloa on Hawaii Island, known as the Alakahakai, is recognized as a National Historic Trail and managed by the National Park Service. It's a 175-mile trail system that circumnavigates the island of Hawaii. The Alakahakai National Historic Trail on Hawaii Island contains the oldest and best remaining examples of the ancient Alaloa on their island, the major land route connecting the reaches of the coastal settlement zone of most Ahupua'a on the island of Hawaii. The Alaloa was essential to the movement of early Hawaiians, kapoe kahiko, from place to place. The community vision for the Alakahakai is to preserve ancient and historic trails within the corridor and tell the stories of those who use them, to provide access to practice traditional lifestyles and to malama aina, to protect sacred sites, historic places, and natural areas. The Alakahakai National Historic Trail is a dynamic, living cultural resource reflecting the values of an island people and their continuing responsible relationship with their community, land, and ocean resources. On Hawaii Island, trails are respected and honored and malamed. Why is the Alaloa on Kauai Island treated so differently than on Hawaii Island? So this Lepeuli to Fence a Fence project really needs an EIS. and it really needs a cultural impact assessment as well as an archaeological impact assessment before this project is even considered any further. A budget has been made and a fence has been designed by the attorneys without any involvement from agencies tasked with resource management. U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who administers the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and is concerned about the albatross, has not been consulted for comments. DLNR has not been consulted, nor has the State Historic Preservation Division or Na'ala Hele about the potential blockage of the state-held historic trail known as the Alaloa, which is State Historic Site 5030041034. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening to all this, and thank you for caring about public access continuing around the island of Kauai.